Come on!
Let's go! Come on, let's go!
Okay, stay right by me.
Move it! Come on, let's go!
Get out of here, Sophia.
There's your chance. Take it.
I'm grateful.
The day will come when you won't be.
The Walking Dead Season 7 premiere was haunting. The title calls back to Season 1, Dr. Jenner's prophetic warning, and the opening scene also appears to call back to the Season 5 premiere, where Rick is on his knees, lined up, and Gareth kneels to speak with him, very much like Negan did here. However, with Terminus, Glenn was saved from the bat, and a few episodes later, Rick stood victorious after slamming his red-handled machete down on Gareth, disturbingly similar to what Negan has just done with his bloody, barbed wire baseball bat. Every time I watch this episode, I love it just a little bit more. We begin with Rick's eyes, filled with defiance, and Negan, not missing a beat, notices. Negan drags Rick like a dog in and out of the RV. Even Rick in the RV, on all fours, looks up at Negan like a vicious dog, and Negan tosses Rick's axe onto the roof, demanding that he fetch it like a dog, and he congratulates him with "attaboy," like a dog. He talks about clipping his nuts, one after the other, also referring to the 2 kills, implying that he neutered Rick. And when you look up some pros when neutering a dog, they are less dominant and less aggressive, and it refocuses their attention. And Negan finishes with, "You were in charge, clip clip, that's all over." But it's not all death, he reassures Rick. "You can still lead a productive life working for me." And then Rick's dragged back out like a dog and finally tested by cutting off his own son's hand. A nod to the comic, by the way, where Rick is the one without a hand, thanks to the governor. This is like the Bible story with Abraham, interestingly enough, sacrificing his son Isaac. The angel comes down and stops him because it's at that moment that Abraham fears God, just like Negan stops Rick because it's at that moment that Rick fears Negan. Connecting to the God theme, Negan calls his extortion an offering, echoing the iconic comic "Ta-ta" when he leaves. And if you're a comic fan and you look closely, you can also recognize some of the weapons from the iconic Something to Fear story arc, like the axe. You can also spot the chainsaw guy behind Maggie, and the rest are pretty much mixed among the crowd. You'll also notice the Polaroid guy who appears to be holding one picture, which is probably Abe, while taking Glenn's death pic, which is a horrible full circle event. Glenn saw the pictures on the wall, and then he became a picture, most likely because of what Daryl did. And Daryl, who is now taken by the Saviors, and who blames himself most likely for getting Glenn killed, will likely see Glenn's death pic on the new wall, since he now belongs to Negan. Glenn's death was also extremely accurate from the comic book, and Skybound did an article covering the differences and similarities between the comic and the show version. So I'm going to put a link down in that video description. Go ahead and check that out. I highly encourage you to. The brutality was equally matched with amazing practical effects. At one moment, you can actually see Glenn's face, his eye and his nose, looking up from the pile of mush. The overall outcome might have been exactly what Negan wanted. He was taunting and testing everybody, and he was making mental notes of each one. Likely, he even did it in the trailer before stepping out. Negan is processing everything, and his first decision was likely to take out the muscle. Breaking Rick works because you likely gain his current supporters, but Abraham was confident and defiant, and he stood tall against Negan's threatening presence. So Negan knew this defiance was unpredictable, and he seems to be fishing for confirmation afterwards when he's talking to Rick about having a right-hand man. Abraham, though, accepts his sacrifice so the others can live. He gave a final goodbye to Sasha, forming a peace sign. They both shared this exclusively, and this knocked the wind out of Sasha, but it was Rosita's emotional response that drew Negan's attention. Like the title, Daryl lashing out at Negan was probably a callback to the season 1 finale when Daryl lashed out at Dr. Jenner.
Those doors are designed to withstand a rocket launcher.
We are heading.
And you can hear Rick calling out for Daryl after he's tackled, which Negan notices.
Daryl! No!
And you can add this to one of the reasons why Negan takes Daryl instead of killing him. He sees Rick's emotional response, and he uses this as reassurance that Rick will fall in line. Or, not today, not tomorrow, he's going to cut off pieces of Daryl. And watch Dwight here. He seems a bit too eager to honor a death order from Negan, as if he wants to prove he's willing to carry out, without hesitation, any order he's given. Another hint for Dwight fans and haters, in the title cards you see Lucille, and then in the fire is an old-fashioned iron heating up. Now Negan dismisses Dwight, telling him that you don't kill that until you try a little, likely meaning that he sees Daryl as a great fit for a savior, an animal who wants to be domesticated. Maybe he wants to break him and put him into a leader position where he's running one of the outposts for the Saviors. Negan threatened Carl's eye if anyone moved during Abraham's beating, but since that was over, Negan dishes out a different punishment. They already took the group muscle, and now, from what he can tell, he'll crush the group at its emotional core. And his very brief compassion when he turns around to Maggie might actually confirm that he understands that Negan chose the right one to be the second kill. I don't think this is a callback, but it's interesting to note that when Glenn was abducted by the governor's men, which was Merle, Daryl's brother, the first thing he did, his first outburst afterwards, was to drag a walker out of a truck and stomp its head in like 15 times till it was a pile of mush. Now he's captured by Negan's men, the Saviors, and he ends up being the one who has his head stomped in till it's nothing but mush. I thought that was just interesting to note. And Glenn's final words, "I'll find you." And in my opinion, that's like an anti-goodbye. He's been separated from Maggie before, but he's always found her. So in the afterlife, no matter what, he will find her again. And I know it's a gruesome beating, but this shot is beautifully lit to match the comic panels. Seriously, check out Skybound's article. And if you look closely, you would notice that the two deaths were actually foreshadowed when Negan was driving the RV and he ran into the two walkers. Their heads exploded all over the windshield. One of them just so happened to be over the driver's seat, and Abraham was the one driving, going from roadblock to roadblock. Negan even teases Rick by asking him if they remind him of anybody he knows. And the smoke during this part of the story is very effective. Remember, Rick Grimes has been awake for 24 hours. He's exhausted. His mind is probably all foggy, thinking about what happened, what could still happen. And once he gets on top of the RV, he realizes where Negan has brought him. They are back at the last roadblock, and behind him, the hanging man, the last survivor of another community that stood in defiance against Negan and the Saviors. Negan tosses the axe onto the roof. This way, Rick can come face to face with what his group will look like in the end if he continues to remain defiant. And then we get it. A genius filmmaking decision. On top of the RV, Rick kneels almost exactly like how he kneels in the lineup. And this, for the first time this episode, brings us right back to where we ended in Season 6, picking up where the cliffhanger left off, but this time through the eyes of Rick Grimes. It's genius. The shots of Rick, though, on top of the RV, I feel like that's a tribute to the first time Glenn entered the story. Rick was stuck in a tank surrounded by walkers, and now he's on top of the RV, again surrounded by walkers. And Negan's gunfire forces Rick to get up and jump onto the hanging man walker. In the RV, Negan tells Rick, "Let's be friends," and here he shoots the walkers, saving Rick, showing him he isn't always a threat, as long as they understand each other, and as long as Rick knows his place. And once the Saviors leave, we get another incredible image. As they take Glenn away, Maggie is separated from him forever, leaving her to mourn alone, just 2 puddles of blood and 2 tree trunks. Negan's words here are calm and almost caring, like a friend comforting another.
Bet you thought you were all gonna grow old together, sitting around the table at Sunday dinner in the happily ever after. No, doesn't work like that, Rick. Not anymore.
And we get the dinner scene with Judith a little bit older wearing Carl's hat, foreshadowing Glenn having a son in the future. And many fans believe that Morgan is putting out 2 candles, but I watched this repeatedly and it really looks like Morgan is simply balancing them. There's 5 candles, if I'm counting correctly, in the back of the one. You see it tilted, it's leaning. And 2 candles stay lit all the time, like a vigil, to the 2 characters who died. And if you look close, you can't ever see Morgan actually putting out any candles. And the final scenes show a walker coming out of the woods and kneeling down at Glenn's puddle of blood, where Glenn was kneeling before he was killed. And all I could think of was, we are the Walking Dead. Rick, looking into the side mirror of the RV, again could be calling back to season 1, where Glenn drove past him in a sports car.
At least somebody's having a good day.
The episode began with Rick's defiant eyes, and it ended with a look that has been extinguished of all defiance. And many fans see a broken Rick. But broken, truly broken, cannot be fixed. Rick's been beaten into submission, yes. Maybe broken down, okay. But he is not broken. Subscribe now.